I never thought I'd be left out in the cold by my own daughter. I never imagined the man she married would strip me of my dignity in my lowest moment and that she would let him. But what they didn't know was that life had one last card for me to play. And when I played it, everything changed. Get ready, because what you're about to hear is not just a story, it's a reckoning. My name is Margaret, and at 58, I once believed love was a bond that could never break, especially with family. I poured my heart into my husband, Henry, and our daughter, Amanda. Every meal I cooked, every holiday I planned, every sacrifice I made was for them. When Henry lost his battle with cancer last year, it was as if the world crumbled beneath me. I clung to Amanda, my anchor, my reason to keep going. I sold our Cedar Park home, the one Henry and I built with our bare hands, because the echoes of his laughter in those walls were too much to bear. Amanda and her husband, Chad, offered me a place to stay, at least, Amanda did. Chad barely glanced up from his phone when I arrived, my life reduced to 2 suitcases and a heart full of grief. I tried to blend into their world, keeping to a small back room, cooking their meals, scrubbing their floors, running errands, anything to feel useful, to stay invisible. But Chad had a way of making me feel like an intruder in my own daughter's home. His irritation was a constant shadow, his eyes sharp with disdain, as if my presence was a burden he couldn't shake. It started small, a roll of his eyes when I spoke, switching the TV mid-show, a muttered freeloader as he brushed past me in the hall. I told myself I misheard, but the sting told me otherwise. I looked to Amanda for support, for a single word to bridge the gap, but she'd only shrug. He's stressed, Mom. Work's tough. I swallowed my hurt, believing that's what mothers do, endure. Then came the night that broke me. We sat at their dinner table, the air thick with silence. I'd made chicken pot pie, Chad's favorite, hoping for a flicker of warmth. Amanda scrolled through her phone, Chad sipped his beer. Out of nowhere, he looked up, his voice cutting like a blade. This isn't temporary anymore, Margaret. We're not a charity. My heart stopped. Amanda froze, her eyes glued to her screen. What do you mean? I managed, my voice barely a whisper. He smirked. You're not working, not contributing. We've got bills. We didn't sign up for this. I turned to Amanda, pleading with my eyes, but she wouldn't meet them. Maybe it's best, she mumbled, for everyone's sake, if you find something stable. I didn't scream or fight. I stood, walked to my room, and packed my life into those 2 suitcases. The tears didn't come until I was outside, the Austin wind biting through my coat, standing on a curb with nowhere to go. Amanda didn't walk me out. Chad didn't pretend to care. I sat there for an hour, my phone dead, my spirit heavier than the bags at my feet. I thought, this is what it feels like to be erased. That night, I checked into a motel with peeling wallpaper and a vending machine that mocked my quarters. Lying on a lumpy mattress, I stared at the ceiling, wondering how love could turn so cold, how my daughter could turn her back so easily. I sent her texts, I understand. I love you always, but they sank into silence. Weeks turned into months, each day stretching longer than the last. I applied for jobs, anything to claw my way back, but no one wanted a grieving widow in her late 50s with no recent resume. The loneliness was a weight I carried alone, heavier than shame, heavier than betrayal. One evening, rummaging through a box of keepsakes, photos, letters, fragments of a life I no longer recognized, I found my mother's diary. Small, leather-bound, its pages yellowed but familiar, like her voice calling me back. I hadn't read it in years, maybe ever. That night, on the edge of the motel bed, I opened it. Her neat, inked loops told stories of ordinary days, weather, church, grocery prices, until I reached an entry from June that stopped my heart. He came again today. Said he wished I could be his wife, but he has a family, a name to protect. Margaret will never know. She must never know. I pray she understands how much I loved her, even if she was born of mistaken desire. My hand shook. I read it again, then flipped forward. More entries, veiled but clear, secret meetings, cash she needed but tried to refuse, initials, HJS. Then, a February entry, he promised a trust, a letter with his lawyer, Mr. Goldstein. For Margaret, if anything happens to him. My breath caught. Goldstein. The name sparked a memory. 2 days of searching on the motel's ancient computer led me to Leonard Goldstein, a retired estate lawyer in Dallas. I wrote him a letter, my hands trembling, pouring out my mother's name, my story, begging for answers. 2 weeks later, his call came. "I always wondered if you'd reach out," he said, his voice soft with recognition. "There's something you need to see." On a Greyhound to Dallas, I braced myself, half expecting a scam. But in his quiet office, surrounded by old books and older silence, he handed me a yellowed envelope addressed to my daughter, Margaret Louise. It was from Harold James Sterling, founder of Sterling Energy, a titan of Texas oil. He confessed everything: the affair, the regret, the silent love, and a promise, a trust untraceable, worth over $1 million in accounts, investments, and titles. I stared at the papers, then at Goldstein. "This is real?" I whispered. He nodded. "It's yours. Always was." My heart thundered, not for the money, but for the truth. I was seen, chosen. That night, back in the motel, I didn't sleep. I smiled, a spark igniting where despair had lived. They thought they'd discarded me, but I was just beginning. I didn't rush back to Austin. I stayed in Dallas, walking its streets, sipping coffee, watching lives unfold. I wasn't invisible anymore, not the weak kind, at least. Grief had turned to fuel, shame to clarity. I returned to Austin, renting a sleek downtown apartment off South Congress, far from the motel's stale air. I dressed sharper, moved with purpose, learned the language of investments and real estate from YouTube and business meetups. I wasn't building an empire, I was building armor. Then I found it, a listing for a distressed apartment building in East Austin, the one where Amanda and Chad lived. My heart raced. The owner had defaulted on taxes, and the auction was weeks away. With Goldstein's help, I formed ML Holdings, an anonymous LLC, and placed the winning bid. Quietly, legally, I owned the place where they'd humiliated me, where they'd reduced my life to 2 suitcases. The first notice went out a month later, rents reassessed, Chad and Amanda's tripled to market value plus fees. I could feel Chad's rage from miles away, his need for control unraveling. Amanda called, her first outreach since that night. "Mom, something weird's happening. Our rent shot up. Chad's losing it." I let it go to voicemail. This wasn't revenge, it was gravity, the weight of their choices pressing down. I drove by their building one night, their lights flickering, shadows moving, Chad yelling, Amanda pacing. I didn't linger. Part of me ached for my daughter, but another part felt the steel I'd forged. I wasn't broken, I was remade. 3 weeks later, I saw Amanda in a grocery store, 2 aisles over, looking worn, her cart half empty with cheap staples. She didn't see me. I followed, heart pounding, watching her hesitate over a box of mac and cheese, then put it back after a text, likely from Chad. That moment cracked something in me, not pity, but memory, the little girl who'd run to me for comfort, now trapped with a man who drained her light. I drove home and sat in silence, reminding myself this was consequence, not cruelty. The building became my chessboard. I authorized repairs, leaks, lights, mailboxes, all under ML Holdings. Chad's angry emails piled up, demanding to know who owned the building, but my lawyer's privacy trust kept my name hidden. His ego couldn't handle the faceless power. Amanda's calls grew desperate, her voicemail soft, "I miss you, Mom." I didn't respond, not yet. She needed to feel the void she'd helped create. One evening, the intercom buzzed. "This is Amanda Harmon." Is my mom here?" My heart stopped. I let her in. She stood in my doorway, rain-soaked, clutching a grocery bag, eyes red. I handed her a towel, poured chamomile tea, and we sat in silence. "He's not who I thought," she whispered. "He's angry, obsessed. He thinks someone's targeting us." She paused. "I found your building listed." I know it's you. I stayed quiet. I miss you, she said, but I don't know how to be around you anymore. I met her eyes. You didn't let him push me out, Amanda. You stood with him. She flinched, but the truth hung between us. When she left, she hugged me, and I held her briefly, cautiously, like holding a fragile memory. The tenant meeting came next. I arrived in a charcoal blazer, unrecognizable from the woman they'd discarded. Chad stormed in, demanding the owner. When I stood and said, "I'm Margaret, the owner," the room froze. Chad's face twisted, confusion, then fury. You? You're trying to ruin us. I held my ground. No game, Chad. Just business. Amanda's eyes glistened, caught between shock and realization. Chad threatened me as the room emptied, but Amanda stepped in. Stop. She's not your enemy. You are. I nodded to her. You had to see it, not hear it. Days later, Amanda returned, holding my mother's diary. I found it, she said. I read it. I didn't know about Sterling, the trust, any of it. I nodded. I didn't either, until I had nothing left. She confessed she'd left Chad after he tried controlling her again. I don't know who I am without him, she admitted, but I'd rather find out. I held her hand. You see me now. That changes everything. Chad's final email came, a desperate threat to expose my mother's affair. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who buried him in legal warnings, records of his harassment, falsified documents, tenant complaints. He vanished, leaving a note for Amanda, claiming I'd ruined him. She moved out, started therapy, painted a phoenix for me, reds and golds, now above my fireplace. We talked, not daily, but honestly, rebuilding trust one truth at a time. I sold the building in spring, the proceeds split between a women's shelter, named the Eleanor House for my mother, and a small Cedar Park home with a porch swing. Amanda helped me move in, and we laughed over burnt grilled cheese, a flicker of the past we'd lost. That night, I stood at my window, tea in hand, and forgave myself. They tried to erase me, but I became unforgettable. I tucked a note in the diary for Amanda, you don't need their love to be worthy. You only need the truth. My heart was warm. I was home.